What if everything you've been told about who you are is fundamentally wrong? What if the soul you think defines your identity doesn't actually exist in the way you've always imagined? And yet, paradoxically, what if something about you has been journeying through countless lifetimes, accumulating experiences, evolving through realms of existence you can barely conceive, moving toward a destination so profound that grasping it could transform your entire understanding of why you're here on Earth right now? For over 25 centuries, Tibetan Buddhism has preserved teachings that challenge our most basic assumptions about identity, purpose, and the nature of consciousness itself. Today we're diving deep into the Tibetan secrets that unveil the true nature of your soul's journey, revealing why you're here, where you've been, where you're going, and most importantly, how you can transform this precious human existence into something far more meaningful than you ever imagined possible. If you've ever wondered about the deeper purpose of your life and sensed there's something more to existence than what meets the eye, subscribe now and activate notifications, because this exploration will fundamentally shift how you understand your place in the vast unfolding of consciousness across time and space. Let's begin with what might seem like a contradiction. Tibetan Buddhism, along with all schools of Buddhist philosophy, teaches the doctrine of Anatman or anatta, which translates as no self or non-self. This teaching states clearly and unequivocally that there is no permanent, unchanging, independently existing self or soul. When you search within your experience for something you could identify as the essential you, something that remains constant and unchanging beneath all the fluctuations of thoughts, emotions, sensations, and experiences, you find nothing. Your body is constantly changing, cells dying and regenerating, atoms cycling in and out. Your thoughts are in constant flux, arising and dissolving moment by moment. Your emotions shift with circumstances. Your memories fade and transform. Your personality evolves over time. Even your sense of being a witnessing subject, the feeling that there's a you observing your experience, changes based on states of consciousness, sometimes prominent and solid feeling, sometimes barely present at all. The Buddha taught that what we call the self is actually 5 aggregates temporarily assembled, constantly changing, and lacking any permanent essence. These 5 skandhas include form, the physical body and material existence; feeling, the basic quality of experience as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral; perception, the recognition and labeling of sensory input; mental formations, the complex patterns of thought, emotion, intention, and habit; and consciousness itself, the basic awareness that knows all the other aggregates. When you investigate closely, you discover that none of these 5 components is permanent, none is truly yours in any absolute sense, and none constitutes a findable self. They're all processes, events, happenings that arise based on causes and conditions and dissolve when those causes and conditions change. So if there's no permanent self or soul, how can Tibetan Buddhism speak about a journey that consciousness takes across lifetimes? How can there be rebirth if there's nothing that's reborn? This is where the teaching becomes subtle and profound. The no-self doctrine doesn't mean that nothing continues from moment to moment or from life to life. What continues is a stream or continuum of consciousness, sometimes called the mental continuum or mind stream. Think of it like a river. A river has no permanent essence. The water flowing through it at this moment is completely different from the water that flowed yesterday or will flow tomorrow. The shape of the banks changes over time. The speed and volume fluctuate with seasons, yet we still speak meaningfully of the Mississippi River or the Ganges River as having continuity and identity across time. In the same way, consciousness continues as a stream, carrying patterns and tendencies forward, but never remaining fixed or permanent. This mental continuum operates according to the law of karma, the principle of cause and effect in the realm of intentional action. Every thought motivated by craving, aversion, or ignorance leaves a subtle imprint on the continuum of consciousness. Every action driven by afflictive emotions creates karmic momentum that will ripen into future experiences. Every habit you cultivate deepens grooves in the mind stream that make similar patterns more likely to arise again. These karmic imprints and tendencies travel with the mental continuum from life to life, shaping what realms of existence consciousness takes birth in, what circumstances it encounters, what opportunities and challenges it faces. So while there's no unchanging soul moving from body to body like a person moving from one house to another, there is genuine continuity of a consciousness stream carrying forward the consequences of past actions and the potential for future awakening. Understanding this sets the foundation for grasping the true nature of your soul's journey, according to Tibetan wisdom. You are not a fixed entity that entered this body at birth and will leave it at death, remaining essentially unchanged by the experience. You are a process, a stream of consciousness that has been flowing beginninglessly through countless forms of existence, sometimes in realms of great suffering, sometimes in realms of temporary pleasure, accumulating patterns and tendencies, evolving through experiences, gradually learning or failing to learn the lessons that could lead to liberation from the entire cycle of compulsive rebirth. This current human life you're living right now is one moment in an inconceivably vast journey. And what makes it special, what makes it precious beyond measure, is that this particular form of existence offers unique opportunities that most other forms don't provide. This brings us to one of the most foundational contemplations in Tibetan Buddhism, the meditation on precious human rebirth. The teachings explain that human existence is extraordinarily rare and valuable because it provides the optimal balance of suffering and opportunity necessary for spiritual awakening. Think about this carefully. If you were born in one of the hell realms, realms of intense physical and psychological torment, you would be so overwhelmed by suffering that spiritual practice would be impossible. Your entire existence would be consumed by pain and the desperate wish for it to cease. If you were born as a hungry ghost, a being tormented by insatiable craving that can never be satisfied, you would be so dominated by desire and deprivation that you couldn't focus on anything beyond your compulsive hunger. If you were born as an animal, you would lack the cognitive capacity for abstract reasoning, moral reflection, and understanding of spiritual teachings. Your existence would be governed by instinct, fear, and simple survival concerns. On the other hand, if you were born in one of the God realms, enjoying long lifespans, extraordinary pleasures, and freedom from obvious suffering, you would have no motivation to practice. Why seek liberation from suffering when you're experiencing centuries or eons of blissful ease? The God realms sound wonderful, and they are in relative terms, but they're actually spiritually dangerous because beings there become complacent, assuming their happiness is permanent, not recognizing that when the karma sustaining their divine rebirth exhausts itself, they will fall from those heights into lower realms, often experiencing the hell realms as the karmic consequences of pride and complacency ripen. The demigod or jealous god realm, characterized by constant competition and warfare over resources and status, is similarly unpropitious for spiritual development because beings there are consumed by jealousy, aggression, and the drive to dominate others. Human existence occupies the precious middle ground. We experience enough suffering, enough awareness of aging, sickness, death, loss, disappointment, and existential uncertainty to be genuinely motivated to seek lasting solutions rather than temporary palliatives. Yet we also have sufficient leisure, cognitive capacity, access to teachings, and freedom from overwhelming pain to actually engage in spiritual practice. The teachings specify 8 freedoms and 10 endowments that characterize a precious human rebirth. The 8 freedoms are freedom from birth in hell realms, as hungry ghosts, as animals, as long-lived gods in barbarous lands without access to teachings, with defective sense faculties that prevent learning, holding wrong views that deny karma and rebirth, and in times and places where no Buddha has taught. The 10 endowments include 5 personal endowments of being human, born in a central land with access to teachings, having intact faculties, not having committed heinous crimes that obstruct practice, and having faith in the teachings, plus 5 circumstantial endowments of a Buddha, having appeared in the world, having taught the Dharma, the teachings still existing, there being followers of those teachings, and supportive conditions for practice being available. When you reflect deeply on how rare it is to obtain all 18 of these conditions simultaneously, you begin to appreciate the extraordinary opportunity you have right now. The majority of beings in the 6 realms of samsara exist in the 3 lower realms where spiritual practice is essentially impossible. Among those born in the higher realms, Most lack one or more of the 18 qualifying conditions. To have been born human, in a time and place where Buddhist teachings are accessible, with the mental capacity to understand them, with enough leisure and resources to practice, with interest in spiritual development rather than pure materialism, this combination is so rare that the traditional analogy compares it to a blind turtle swimming in a vast ocean who surfaces once every 100 years and just happens to put its head through a wooden ring floating randomly on the waves. That's how unlikely it is to obtain precious human rebirth. Lama Zopa Rinpoche teaches that this precious human rebirth is so precious because you can use it to generate loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, the altruistic intention to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. You can use it to practice the 3 higher trainings of ethical discipline, concentration, and wisdom. You can use it to progress through the stages of the path to enlightenment. Each moment of this human life has the potential to create causes for ultimate liberation, not just for yourself, but for countless beings you can benefit once you've achieved realization. This is infinitely more meaningful than using your precious human existence merely for temporary pleasures, social status, material accumulation, or even just to live comfortably without causing obvious harm. Those are fine as far as they go, but they represent a tragic waste of the rarest and most valuable resource in all of cyclic existence, a qualified human rebirth with all conditions for spiritual accomplishment. The teaching emphasizes that for the majority of beings in samsara, precious human birth will occur for them for one time only during the infinite span of endless rebirths. Think about what that means. You have been cycling through existence beginninglessly, taking birth again and again in various forms, usually in the 3 lower realms where nothing but suffering is experienced. On rare occasions, positive karma accumulated in a previous human life ripens, and you obtain rebirth in a higher realm, perhaps as a human or even a god. But without using that opportunity to create substantial new positive karma and reduce afflictive mental patterns, when the fuel of previous good karma exhausts itself, consciousness falls back into the lower realms for countless lifetimes before another precious human birth might occur. From this perspective, your current human existence isn't just one life among many, equally valuable or disposable. It's potentially your only realistic chance for liberation across unimaginable stretches of time. Now let's examine more closely what this journey through the 6 realms actually entails. Because understanding the full scope of samsaric existence is crucial for recognizing why you need to use this human life wisely. The 6 realms of existence in Tibetan Buddhist cosmology represent different states of rebirth determined by the predominant mental afflictions and karmic patterns of beings at the time of death. These can be understood literally as actual realms where consciousness takes birth in different forms, and symbolically as psychological states that beings cycle through even within a single lifetime. Both interpretations are valid and complement each other. The hell realms, of which there are multiple levels with varying degrees and types of suffering, are characterized by overwhelming physical and psychological torment. Beings there are consumed by the ripening of hatred, violence, and harmful actions committed in previous lives. The suffering is so intense and consciousness is so traumatized that no room exists for anything but experiencing the consequences of past negative karma. The duration of life in hell realms can be inconceivably long from a human perspective, though like all conditioned existence, it's ultimately impermanent. When the specific karma that propelled consciousness into that realm exhausts itself, rebirth occurs elsewhere, though often another hell realm or lower realm follows because the habit patterns of anger and violence remain deeply ingrained in the mental continuum. The hungry ghost realm is characterized by insatiable craving that can never be satisfied. Beings there are typically depicted with enormous bellies representing endless hunger but tiny mouths and throats that make consuming anything impossible, or they perceive food and water transforming into repulsive substances or flames when they try to consume it. This realm represents the karmic consequences of extreme greed, miserliness, and addictive behaviors. The suffering is primarily psychological rather than physical, the torment of desire that intensifies when fed rather than being satisfied, the agony of always wanting but never having, the desperation of compulsive need that drives all other concerns from awareness. The animal realm encompasses all non-human creatures from insects to mammals. The primary characteristic is ignorance and instinctual behavior, without capacity for moral reflection or abstract reasoning. Animals live in constant fear of predation, struggling for survival, driven by biological imperatives they can't transcend. While some animals in human care might seem to have pleasant lives, from the Buddhist perspective, they're still trapped in a limited form of consciousness that prevents spiritual development. An animal cannot hear teachings, cannot understand karma, cannot generate bodhicitta, cannot practice meditation. At best, positive exposure to sacred images, sounds, or blessings might create karmic seeds for better rebirth in the future, but during that animal lifetime, no significant spiritual progress is possible. The human realm we've already discussed as the precious middle ground offering optimal conditions for awakening. Yet most humans waste this opportunity, living lives driven by the same three poisons of ignorance, attachment, and aversion that keep all beings trapped in samsara. The distinguishing feature of human existence is the potential for wisdom, moral reflection, and deliberate spiritual cultivation, but that potential must be actively developed or it remains latent and unused. The jealous god or demigod realm is characterized by constant competition, warfare, and the affliction of envy. Beings in this realm possess powers and pleasures exceeding those of humans but less than the gods, and they're tormented by jealousy of the gods whose good fortune surpasses their own. They spend their existence fighting for greater status and resources, achieving temporary victories that never bring satisfaction because someone else always has more. This realm represents the karmic consequences of competitiveness, jealousy, and the inability to rejoice in others' good fortune. It's spiritually barren because beings there are so consumed by comparison and conflict that they have no energy or interest for practice. The god realms represent the peak of samsaric existence, characterized by long lifespans, extraordinary pleasures, and freedom from the gross sufferings of lower realms. Yet, as we've noted, these realms are spiritually dangerous precisely because of their comfortable nature. The gods experience what seems like perfect happiness for vast stretches of time, measured in human centuries or eons, and they assume this state is permanent. They have no motivation to practice or seek liberation. Then, as the karma sustaining their divine rebirth begins to exhaust itself, they develop the ability to foresee their impending death and descent into lower realms. The teachings describe that the suffering a god experiences in the final days before death, recognizing the loss of all pleasure and status and anticipating the horror awaiting in hell realms, exceeds all the pleasure they experienced during their entire divine lifetime. This is why the god realms, despite appearing desirable, are considered problematic from the perspective of liberation. These 6 realms are organized into 3 lower realms of hell beings, hungry ghosts and animals, characterized by intense suffering and lack of opportunity, and 3 higher realms of humans, demigods and gods, characterized by relative fortune but still bound by suffering's subtle pervasiveness. East Asian Buddhist literature elaborates this into 31 levels of existence with detailed gradations within each major realm. The key point is that all 6 realms, even the god realms at the top of the hierarchy, remain within samsara, the cycle of conditioned existence characterized by dukkha, the unsatisfying nature of all conditioned phenomena. No matter which realm you're born in, suffering in some form is inescapable. In the lower realms, it manifests as obvious physical and psychological torment. In the higher realms, it manifests as impermanence, the inevitable loss of whatever temporary pleasures are experienced, and as the anxiety and clinging that arise from knowing at some level that nothing lasts. This is why Tibetan Buddhism emphasizes that the ultimate goal isn't to obtain better rebirths in fortunate realms, but to achieve complete liberation from the entire cycle of rebirth in any realm whatsoever. And this liberation is possible precisely because there is no permanent self to be trapped. If you actually were an eternal, unchanging soul being punished or rewarded for deeds, then samsara would be an eternal prison, or at best, a never-ending school where graduation is impossible. But because what you are is a process, a stream of consciousness shaped by causes and conditions, you have the capacity to change those causes and conditions, to purify afflictions and obscurations, to realize the true nature of mind, and thus to bring the entire cycle of compulsive rebirth to an end. The path to accomplishing this liberation constitutes the soul's true journey, though we must remember we're using the word soul loosely, since there's no permanent soul in Buddhist teaching. The journey is the gradual transformation of the mental continuum from ignorant and afflicted to wise and purified. Tibetan Buddhism maps this journey through systematic stages. The initial stage is called the scope of small capacity, where you recognize the sufferings of lower realms and are motivated by the wish to avoid rebirth there, leading you to practice ethical conduct and take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha as sources of protection and guidance. The intermediate scope recognizes that even favorable rebirths in higher realms still involve suffering and impermanence, leading to the development of renunciation, the determination to be free from all samsaric existence, and practice of the 3 higher trainings of ethics, concentration, and wisdom. The great scope, the distinctively Mahayana approach preserved and elaborated in Tibetan Buddhism, involves recognizing that all beings without exception have been your mother in countless previous lives, that all beings want happiness and freedom from suffering just as you do, and that your own liberation alone is insufficient, while countless beings remain trapped in suffering. This recognition leads to the generation of bodhicitta, the extraordinary altruistic intention to achieve complete enlightenment, specifically so you can guide all beings to liberation. With bodhicitta as motivation, you train in the 6 perfections of generosity, ethical discipline, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom, gradually purifying obscurations and accumulating merit over the course of many lifetimes, progressing through the 10 bodhisattva levels until finally achieving the full enlightenment of Buddhahood. From this perspective, the true nature of your soul's journey is the gradual awakening to what you've always been beneath the confusion and affliction. Tibetan Buddhism teaches that all beings possess Buddha nature, the innate potential for enlightenment, the fundamental purity and luminosity of mind that's never been defiled by ignorance, even though ignorance has obscured it like clouds covering the sun. The journey isn't about becoming something you're not, but about removing the obscurations that prevent you from recognizing what you are. Every experience of suffering, if met with wisdom and compassion rather than reactivity, becomes an opportunity to wear away another layer of ignorance. Every act of generosity loosens the grip of attachment. Every moment of patience dissolves the power of aversion. Every practice session stabilizes concentration and penetrates more deeply into the nature of reality. The secret that Tibetan wisdom reveals is that this journey doesn't require countless lifetimes if you practice with sufficient diligence and devotion. The tantric methods preserved in Tibetan Buddhism, when practiced properly under qualified guidance, can compress the path that might ordinarily require 3 countless eons of accumulating merit and wisdom into a single lifetime or even a few years. These methods work directly with the subtle energies, channels, and drops we discussed in previous teachings, causing the coarse levels of mind to dissolve and revealing the subtlest clear light consciousness that's your deepest nature. When that subtlest mind realizes emptiness directly, the union of bliss and emptiness that constitutes the ultimate realization, the accumulation of karmic propulsion toward rebirth ceases. Obscurations are purified in a single moment, and full enlightenment manifests. But here's what makes your current human life so precious and so urgent. You have right now all the conditions necessary for this accomplishment. You have a human body and mind capable of understanding and practicing the teachings. You have access to authentic instructions preserved through unbroken lineages, tracing back to Buddha Shakyamuni himself. You have freedom from overwhelming suffering that would make practice impossible. You have some degree of leisure rather than being consumed entirely by survival concerns. These conditions are unbelievably rare, and they're also fragile and impermanent. Death could come at any moment. You could lose mental faculties through injury or disease. Political or social conditions could change, making teachings inaccessible. Your interest in spiritual practice could wane as worldly concerns capture your attention. The window of opportunity you have right now might never come again for countless lifetimes. This isn't meant to create anxiety or desperation, but to inspire what Tibetan Buddhism calls spiritual urgency, the recognition that this moment matters immensely and shouldn't be wasted. When you deeply contemplate the rarity of precious human rebirth, the certainty of death and uncertainty of its timing, the suffering pervading all realms of samsara, and the possibility of liberation through practice, a natural sense of urgency arises, not the urgent scrambling of anxiety, but the focused determination of someone who recognizes they have a precious opportunity and limited time to accomplish something of ultimate value. What this means practically is that every choice you make today shapes your mental continuum and determines your trajectory. Every moment of anger indulged creates momentum toward lower realms and away from peace. Every act of generosity creates causes for fortunate circumstances and loosens attachment. Every session of meditation strengthens concentration and insight. Every teaching you study plants seeds of understanding that will mature over time. You are literally creating yourself moment by moment, shaping the stream of consciousness that will continue beyond this body's death, determining what realms you'll experience and what opportunities you'll have for practice and awakening. The Tibetan masters emphasize that you should approach life with the awareness that this could be your last opportunity to practice for countless lifetimes, not in a morbid way, but with the appreciation someone would have if they discovered they had only days to live and finally understood what truly matters. If you knew you would die tomorrow, would you spend today worried about trivial concerns, pursuing temporary pleasures, nursing resentments, or wasting time on meaningless distractions? Or would you use every precious moment to practice, to purify negativities, to generate love and compassion, to deepen realization, to benefit others while you still have the chance? The teaching is that you should live every day with that awareness, because death truly could come at any moment, and this opportunity truly is that rare and precious. At the same time, the Tibetan approach isn't grim or severe. There's tremendous joy in recognizing that you're on a meaningful journey, that your life has profound purpose, that you have the capacity to transform yourself and benefit countless beings. The teachings on Buddha nature reveal that enlightenment isn't something distant and foreign. You must struggle impossibly to achieve, but rather your own deepest nature waiting to be recognized. Every moment of practice is a homecoming, a return to what you've always been beneath the confusion. And the path itself, when traveled with proper understanding and guidance, is characterized by increasing peace, joy, and freedom, rather than grim endurance of difficulty. So what does this mean for you right now in your current circumstances, with your particular challenges and opportunities? It means first recognizing that you have won what the texts call the cosmic lottery. Against inconceivable odds, you have obtained this precious human rebirth qualified with the freedoms and endowments necessary for spiritual accomplishment. Second, it means not squandering this opportunity through laziness, distraction, or assuming you have infinite time. Third, it means beginning or deepening your practice now, today, this moment, rather than waiting for some imagined future time when conditions will be more favorable. Fourth, it means approaching your practice not as one more obligation or self-improvement project among many, but as the central purpose of your existence, the reason you're here, the one thing that will carry forward beyond this life. And fifth, it means extending your concern beyond your own liberation to embrace all beings, recognizing that the ultimate purpose of your journey is not just to free yourself, but to become capable of guiding countless others to freedom. This is the true nature of your soul's journey as revealed by Tibetan secrets, a journey from ignorance to wisdom, from suffering to peace, from isolation to universal compassion, from the illusion of a separate permanent self to the recognition of your fundamental nature as luminous awareness inseparable from the totality of existence. You're not a fixed entity traveling this path, but the path itself unfolding, consciousness evolving through experience toward its own complete awakening. Every moment is an opportunity. Every breath is precious. Every choice matters. The journey spans countless lifetimes and takes place entirely in this present moment. And you have right now everything you need to accomplish what you came here to do. So what part of this teaching touches you most deeply? Does recognizing the rarity and preciousness of human rebirth shift your priorities? Does understanding that you have no permanent self feel liberating or challenging? Does seeing your life as one moment in a vast journey across realms and lifetimes give you a broader perspective on your current circumstances? Share your reflections in the comments below, because contemplating these teachings together deepens understanding for everyone. If this exploration has helped you see the profound meaning and purpose of your existence, hit that like button to help others discover these life-transforming teachings. And if you haven't subscribed, do so now and activate notifications, because we're continuing to explore the deepest wisdom Tibetan Buddhism offers about consciousness, existence, and the path to complete awakening. Share this video with anyone searching for meaning, anyone wondering why they're here and what their life is for, anyone ready to recognize the extraordinary opportunity they have right now. Together, we're building a community of practitioners who understand that this life matters immensely and are committed to using it wisely for the benefit of all beings. Thank you for joining this exploration of your soul's true journey. Until next time, may you recognize the preciousness of this moment, practice with joy and urgency, and progress steadily toward complete awakening for the benefit of all beings everywhere.